My name is Lou Fiore, and I'm speaking about my faith. The title of my talk tonight will be Faith After Fear. I think for the most part, I've always had faith, but maybe not in the formal sense. For me, I've always thought that there was a God, but I didn't really know him. My real awakening of faith was directly related to the Vietnam War and Mary Ann, my wife. The full gauntlet of emotions came to the forefront for me when I left for Vietnam. I was about 6 months behind my unit that I trained with because I played baseball for the Marine Corps. So when I got there, I didn't know anyone. I was 20 years old. It's funny how your mind works. I'm sure mine works very, very well, and maybe not so well. So when we boarded a commercial jetliner from El Toro Air Base, I flew to Da Nang in full combat gear. I thought we were going to be fighting as soon as we got off the plane. Not so. It was like landing at LAX. I stepped off the plane and walked across the tarmac and boarded a helicopter who flew me to a ship, and I stayed there for 3 weeks. I thought this was great. Hot meals, clean sheets, movies, no KP duty, but no. I was sent into the field with others as replacements for the wounded, sick, or whoever was rotating out of the country. So I was on my first patrol, and when we were walking through a meadow, it was hot and sweaty with full gear. We had been walking for about 4 hours in a single line. We walked into a tree line and over a knoll. What we didn't know was that the NVA, which is the North Vietnamese Army, had seen us coming probably a mile away. As soon as we had crested the knoll, they opened up with a barrage of mortar rounds. We scattered to the edge of the knoll where the tree line could give us a little bit of protection. Mortar rounds were landing everywhere. I was laying on the side on one edge of the, I was laying on the edge of the knoll with the rest of my unit. I was laying on the left side of one man when a mortar round landed on the right side of the man and blew him down the hill, probably 50 meters. Later, I found out that he was in the hospital for over 10 months. He did survive, but had severe injuries. I was laying on his left side when the round hit and was wounded with a minor injury. I was airlifted to the ship for 3 days and sent back into the field. On my return to the field, I found out that all but 3 people had survived, either by death. All but 3 people were left in my squad. With a little more than 3 weeks in country, I became a squad leader. That was only because I was a higher rank. Then there were, because I was a higher ranking person at the time than the 3 that were left. Time in Vietnam is non-existent. You take things one day at a time, and sometimes 1 hour at a time, and sometimes 1 minute at a time. Your whole life in the field is on your back. You walk for days and never see anything. You're always on edge and never know what's coming. And it gets worse when you engage the enemy. You try to use your training as best you can, but things move so fast because of the energy, excitement, and fear that you try to bury. that helps to keep you from going crazy. Every contact with the enemy is different. Every day that passes, you think, I made it one more day. I rarely wrote Marianne unless I really thought that I may not really be coming home. After a while, you start to realize maybe someone is watching after me. You pray and you give thanks for one more day. Then when you get really, really short, you really get scared because now you have hope. Hope is like a mirage that you can never reach. I had been with a fellow soldier for most of my tour, and he had struggled just like the rest of us. But he was really close to rotating out, and we were patrolling on a pleasant day in mid-afternoon. And I switched with him to carry the M60 machine gun. We carried 2 machine guns in our platoon. This one had a broken firing pin and wouldn't even fire. As the patrol went by, as we patrolled, the NVA had set up an ambush and hit Mike with a Claymore mine. The NVA must have been late to their spot because they would have gone for the commanding officer or the radio man and then the machine gunner. Mike had 5 days left before he rotated home when he died. It was a great loss for me. The last event that took place will help you to see why I saw the love of God. All of the conflicts that I was in, God showed me the way and let me know that I had very little control over anything during the last event, that I had very little control over anything. During the last event, we were ambushed on a mountain ridge that was fairly narrow, maybe 30 yards wide. When we made contact, everyone scattered for a tree somewhere for protection. I jumped on one side of the slope with a tree. The problem was, it was more like a sapling. So I'm now laying down. I'm laying down to get as close to the ground as possible. Next thing I know, the machine gun rounds are running right across my face, right in front of me. I looked, several rounds hit the ground and was hitting dirt in my face. So I decided this probably wasn't a good location to be in at the time. So it's being all now. I had been in the country for nearly 11 months and had not taken any R&R, even though I was eligible after 4 months. I had finally put in for an R&R or authorization for Australia, and I was approved. I knew that I would miss my opportunity for R&R if I was involved in the next operation. So I went to my commanding officer and let him know that. He told me this operation was too important and that I had to go. So yes, I went on this mission, and we got into one of the largest firefights that I had ever been in. The casualties were getting bad. The weather was hampering our ability to evacuate our casualties. We were in a heavily treated area, so our medevac choppers had to tie a line on the baskets and winch them down into the area, and then winch them back up to put the wounded on the helicopters. The last chopper that was open was for one more person. Almost everyone knew that I was going on R&R, So I jumped on that basket and was pulled through the trees while being shot at. When I flew out, I was torn by my decision to go. 7 days later, when I returned, I found out that we had severe casualties, and I rotated out shortly after. Mary Ann was and still is an amazing inspiration to me. She has always been there for me, providing some sense of normal. She sent letters to me often as she could, but I had little time to read them all because I got mail in the rear safe areas, and I couldn't take them with me into the field. She remains an inspiration in my life, and I know God has put us together for a reason. It was only in hindsight that I realized that God had held me in his arms. Looking back, I could clearly see that it was God's plan and purpose that saved my life. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, you described, I remember hearing once about how you really didn't want to go on R&R because so many of the people who did lost their focus when they came back. Talk a little bit about that decision from your point of view. Why did you not?
Well, the first place is Mary Ann wanted me to come to Hawaii on R&R, and I totally refused because I knew if I went to Hawaii, I would not come back. I figured I'm not going to go there because I'd be AWOL because I wouldn't go back. And it proved out that typically I wanted to go to Australia since I knew I wasn't going to go to Hawaii and see Mary Ann anyway, but there was no openings for Australia. So 1 month led to another, which lengthened me out, and that's why I had such a late time going to R&R, which turned out to be the worst experience I had. So I felt guilty about leaving. I felt guilty about being there, and I had no satisfaction once I was there. I had been in country way too long, had not seen a woman on the street for a long time. So I was an idiot. And you just, you're not yourself, you're not looking at things. I'm walking around the city and it's just chaos, and I had no sense. For the most part, 7 days I was drunk, probably most of those days. So when I came back, it was worse. So.
Talk about the experience of coming back after you rotated out and how that was the Vietnam War was such a difficult, there was a lot of criticism for it. Talk about your experience in coming back.
Well, obviously the most enjoyable part of it was that I actually had an opportunity to rotate home. And we were on a commercial jet, fully loaded with all the troops that were coming home. Well, we landed at El Toro base on the way back, and there wasn't one soul there. Nobody, literally nobody. We landed, walked off the plane, walked across to a bus, got in the bus, and I happened to be in Camp Pendleton when I first went over. So that was my base of operations. So when I got in the bus, we drove into Camp Pendleton, but I probably didn't see a person that I really knew, family-wise, or anybody that was close for over a week and a half or so. So that was disappointing to me, that, the lack of, I guess I could say the lack of, trust in people that went, and the courage to go, and whether they wanted to or not, you go, you do what you have to do. but to not get the, like all the wars before that you see on the movies and you see on the TV, or you see them coming home, family and friends and children and all that, you don't see any of that. And then you're rebuked if you're in uniform, So I didn't wear my uniform much after I got home.
Did you wear a uniform when you first came off the base after you got home?
No.
And the reason why is because of the animosity towards the uniform when you got back from people in country?
No, I don't think so. I think it was, I came home at a time when I was uncertain. I didn't know really. I was a totally different person. I had inner feelings that I couldn't express in appropriate ways, and I knew that. And like I spoke of Mary Ann because she was a driving force in my life at that specific time. We had dated a while before I had gone, but I always kidded her that, she wanted to get married before I went, and I always kid her. I said, "That's because you wanted my insurance money." Well, that was only $10,000. So we always get a laugh about that. But the reality is, when I came home, I was distant. I was inward because I was trying to find myself in the experiences that I've experienced.
Did you feel that when you came home and there was no one, but did you feel that the military should have been able to have counseling for you guys to relieve some of that combat pressure that was on you? You were in country 24 hours, you were in Vietnam 24 hours before, and you came back. Did you have time to readjust to coming home properly? Is that one of the problems that you had?
Well, yeah, I think so. I was older, so I was. Let's put it this way: I was surprisingly enough, I was one of the oldest people that was actually in combat with the group, because most of those guys were 17, 18. I was 20, so it was. So, and I had lived away from home. I left home when I was 17. I was on my own for years before I ever went into the service and so on. So I was pretty comfortable with my situation as far as myself. I was self-sufficient. But when I came home, I couldn't relate to Mary Ann on a level that was comforting to me. So she allowed me that time to go through whatever steps I needed to go through myself internally. But to answer your question, there was no offering of assistance anywhere. It was.
Talk to me about, when did you get married? Was it soon afterwards, or?
It was. As a matter of fact, I came home. We got married in. Don't tell my wife. I can't remember. It was. It was very shortly after that. It was. I want to say it was August. Gosh, it's been 45 years. But
So what month did you come home?
I came home in. I don't remember the exact month, but it was.
Foggy part in your life.
June or July? Did you took off from that?
No, it was later than that. It was more. I would say more Yeah, it may have been June or July, somewhere in there, because I think September, October. I'm thinking it's somewhere in August that we actually got married. So it was pretty. It was more. It wasn't probably more than a couple of months, maybe 3. But she was pushing for that, and I was not giving any direct answers. I was just, yes, honey. You know.
You were lost.
Yeah, I was. I was just trying to maintain. But I knew I loved her, but it was still a time where I was trying to sort things out, and I didn't want any conflict.
How long did the turmoil last, Bill? Even after you got married, there had been turmoil going on with them.
Well, I really don't know. I never had any really high stress, I mean, so to speak. I mean, I'd been through so much that I didn't think, I didn't have any discomfort about being at home. I knew that I was in a safe place. I knew that like I say, in hindsight, I had felt that I'd been saved for a reason. I'd been there, and for me to be able to be home and actually get married and have a wife and now have a family, and I mean, things that you think about that time span of that one time when you got off the plane, that now you actually have a life to live, and now you're living it, is pretty amazing.
You talked about, I mean, obviously, leaving that hellhole of Vietnam, and you had a sense that God wasn't done with you and left you. What are some of the milestones in your life where you felt God has in some way really helped shape the man you are today?
Well, in every aspect. Mainly, it's you look at your timeline. I mean, the older you get, you look at the line where you start and you finish, so to speak, and the travels that you make. And I even told Mary Ann, playing baseball, if I had actually stayed in baseball, I was drafted out of baseball into the military because they thought they were professional athletes who were being protected from the draft. We lost 26 guys off our team. And we, so we had telling Mary Ann that I was, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm doing that more often the older you get, But,
Well, baseball was one of those turning points for you.
well, yeah, baseball was a huge turning point for me, because I signed the baseball contract when I was 17 years old. I negotiated my own contract, which is a no-no. Whoever's listening, don't do that. But the point was that if I had stayed in baseball, I'm quite sure that I would have never married Mary Ann, because just too many opportunities, too young, too all of that. You have too much on your plate, and unfortunately, or fortunately, which way it goes, but playing in a small town as a professional athlete, everybody loves you. So everything is at your footsteps. You could have anything you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, and it's all free. So it kind of gives you that ego boost, and your arrogance just kind of takes over yourself. So that was a kind of a learning process, realizing that, looking back, I mean, that the reality that we would stay married would have been very, very slim. So.
You have children now, and I know you look
Well, I think that was what I was saying before, is that just knowing you're going to have a life to go to and develop a family is fabulous. I think the biggest blessing that I've received with my family is that my own children didn't have to go to war. That was absolutely beyond, knowing that your children are safe. We all want our children to be safe, but for me, having the opportunity to know them and to be with them, and one of the reasons that I'm a contractor, and one of the reasons I was a contractor is so I could dictate my own time that I could spend with my children and my family, because I have been given the gift of life again. So I had every opportunity to spend with almost every event that they ever did, which they kind of, I'm sure they, at times they didn't want me there, but because I was always there, you know. I mean, if I had a job and I had to work till 3 in the morning to get it done, so be it. But I could go at 2 in the afternoon and see him play a sport, or see him do a play, or you know, anything like that. So, and it, you know, it's been a great gift for me.
Sounds like in one way that one of the messages you give to God, thank you, God, for a great life in spite of all the challenges.
I could not have ever imagined the life that I have led. And a big part of that life is right here with my congregation, that, you know, they basically raised my kids, which, you know, with youth groups and all the people that, you know, have encouraged us and been with us for all these years. It's things you can't buy, it's things you can't sell, but things that makes you who you are today. So,
Amen.
thank you.